Public Library. How many of you have never been here before? Wonderful, welcome. Hope you come back again. My name is Karen Glass, and I'm a programming librarian here at your public library. And I welcome you on this. I'm glad the weather wasn't a wonderful beach day. We're all glad about that. So I hope you really enjoyed the presentation. I just want to make a couple of announcements ahead of time, the ones you typically hear at the beginning of events. And that would be restrooms right across the way. There's 2 individual restrooms. And of course, up the stairs, there's those 2 large restrooms that most of you know about on the left. We have an exit door in the back here. We have an exit door across the way again. I mean, of course, up the stairs and out the front door. So if you can silence your cell phones, if you wouldn't mind doing that. And I'm going to introduce Yael Reinhardt from Surf Point. And she is going to introduce Carl. And probably say some other things too.
Hi everybody, I'm so happy to see so many familiar faces and new faces, and thank you for filling all the seats. And I've never worked with an organization that has an RSVP list and 100% of the people come. So York shows up, and I'm like so impressed with that. That's amazing. So my name is Yael Reinhardt. I'm the executive director of Surf Point Foundation. We also call ourselves Surf Point. And we're primarily a residency program that is on the coast on Surf Point Road. I think a lot of you have been there, but those of you who haven't, you are very welcome to come. We have events that are open to the public, and you can find out a lot more on our website because we're adding new things all the time. The newest thing, Sam reminded me, is Gardening Together Day, which is up at the garden that used to be the site of Wild Knoll, the home where May Sarton used to live. And so twice a month you can come and garden with us. And we will meet you at any level that you are at with your gardening abilities. That's an upcoming thing that's on our, is it on our website?
Not yet.
Not yet. It will be, maybe Monday.
Check on Monday.
Yeah, Monday, check on Monday. We also have a really big community day on August 2nd that is going to have 3 galleries represented from New York and LA who are reviewing 150 artist portfolios. We had an open call. Did anybody here apply? Yes, 2 people. Awesome. So just get on our email list, and then you'll know about these quirky, interesting opportunities that we think of. This is a pilot idea, so 150 artist slots from Maine and New Hampshire were invited to submit 3 images, and 3 galleries are reviewing all of these images and going to do 3 studio visits each. And they will speak on August 2nd about their impressions and what their programs are about. And the idea with that is, I hope I'm not taking too much of your time, Carl. Just very quick, I'll try. The idea with that is to really try to help develop, continue to develop the work that Kate is doing from George Marshall Store and other people here, to develop the commercial viability of being an artist here, and to create exposure opportunities in both directions. So that will be part of August 2nd. We're going to have a workshop with an artist, Mary Kosel from Boston. It's a Guggenheim winner, so she's good. And an artist installation, and really yummy foraged food with this artist, Rachel Alexandru. So I won't go through the whole program, find it on our website. But just want to say, the whole reason why we exist is because of 2 incredible women that many of you here knew, and who very much still feel very present with us in our lives and also at Surf Point, the building. We feel them there all the time. And their names were Mary Lee Smart and Beverly Hallam. And we are, in addition to creating a residency program that was their vision to take place in their home, we are also stewards of their legacy. And as you know, anybody who's thought about legacy, there are many ways to approach thinking about stewarding legacy, and the way that we have done it is by creating archives that are accessible to people for research and exploration, cataloging Beverly Hallam's artwork that she left to us of about 500 works, and conducting oral histories, which many of you have signed up for and we haven't done yet, but we will, and creating shows. So this is the first real comprehensive show of, I think, 36 or 37 works that, that we have presented. It was with the curator, Kristina Durocher, who could not be here today for personal reasons, but she gives you all a really warm hug. And we're really, really proud to collaborate with the York Public Library and the amazing team, Michelle Sampson, back there.
Michelle Sampson, who's right here.
She is the director of the York Public Library. And if anybody who has ever run anything knows you need a team to do it, and so I just want to call out the staff and all the volunteers that are part of the York Public Library that made this art show happen. So thank you. I want to point out Samantha Butler, who's back there, and is my counterpart at Surf Point. It's the two of us on staff. And then amazing board members, including Titus Polo, who is back there on my right. I feel like I'm a stewardess right now. He's in 36C. And our residents. We have 2 out of our 3 residents for this month. Jamel, who is Jamel Wright Jr. Senior, and you know, I messed that up. So sorry. And Lauren Fensterstock, and Jamel's coming from Atlanta, and Lauren from the great city of Portland. So if you want to see anything about any of our current residents or past residents, again, we put a lot of effort into our website, so check it out. And we have books for sale. Carl Little's book that he collaborated on with Beverly Hallam and we'll talk about today is over here, and I think Carl's willing to sign them and give you all very special messages. We have 2 editions that are for sale that are in the show upstairs, and they're also on our website, and they were made during Beverly Hallam's lifetime and signed by her. And I think that's it. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to read Carl's bio. I'm going to say a few things. Okay. Carl Little was born and raised in New York City and moved to Mount Desert Island with his family in 1989. He holds degrees from Dartmouth, Columbia, and Middlebury. He's the author of a bunch of art books. He wrote this, including the watercolors of John Singer Sargent and Edward Hopper's New England, and has written monographs on many artists, among them Beverly Hallam, Bela Ibkar, John Moore, Joel Babb, Jeffrey Becton, and Irene Olivieri. He's a regular contributor to Art New England, Hyperallergic, Island Journal, Maine Arts Journal, The Working Waterfront, Maine Boats, Homes and Harbors, and Ornament. In 2021, the Dorothea and Leo Radkin Foundation presented him with the Lifetime Achievement Award for his art writing, and I just want to say we collaborate with the Radkin Foundation, and if you don't know about them, they are amazing, so check them out. Congratulations on your award. Little has helped produce several documentaries on Maine artists, including award-winning Imber's Left Hand about the painter John Imber, and Beverly Hallam, artist as Innovator. He juried the show Washed Away, currently at the Portland Public Library, and Quarries, Muse and Material, opening soon at Monson Arts. And there's more that's not even written here, but I think I should stop, because it's extensive, but we are so honored to have you here, Carl, and to really hear from you about your thoughts about Beverly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Karen, do I do something with this?
What was that?
Microphone?
You can
Just put it down.
Just, yeah, if you shut it off.
Yeah, I can do that.
And this is being recorded, so you are warned.
So, welcome everyone. Let me start by thanking Tanny Wold, Karen Blass, and the York Public Library team, staff, and board for organizing this talk and the wonderful Beverly Hallam exhibition upstairs. I also want to thank Bernadine Spears and her husband John for providing lodging for my wife and me. Talk about being spoiled. Like so many libraries in Maine, large and small, this place of books is committed to presenting art. As noted on its website, by hanging their work in a public space, artists enjoy a new and wider audience. Visitors to the library see extraordinary art in an ordinary, unpretentious setting. These exhibitions have been an integral part of the library's mission, namely, quote, to engage the community in the joy of learning. Kudos. I consider libraries to be one of the beating hearts of Maine communities. I personally find it vile and cruel that they are under attack. End of commentary. I extend special gratitude and praise to Yali Reinhardt's fearless director of the Surf Point Foundation. What she has achieved in her 7-year tenure is remarkable and inspiring. The residencies are brilliant. A couple of years ago, I attended an open house to meet the artists, 2 of whom are pictured here. On the left, Sachicho Akiyama, and on the right, Don Voisin. I was impressed by the work that they were getting done and the ambiance of the space. Collegial, fun, free, just like Beverly. Voisin ended up donating a print of one of his works to benefit the foundation. I also enjoyed seeing this wall piece, French Press, donated by Barbara Sullivan, a resident in 2021, who is among a handful of artists in this country who practices fresco. Barbara recently curated a show at Waterfall Arts in Belfast with the title, Does It Match the Couch? One of the current artist residents, sculptor Lauren Fensterstock, posted the photo on the left on her Facebook page the other day with the caption, Sunday Vibes at Surf Point. The photo on the right is from her installation at the Chrysler Art Museum in Norfolk, Virginia. The totality of time lusters the dusk, which my family encountered on a visit in 2020. I can't wait to see what Fensterstock comes up with during her residency. Reinhardt's and her Surf Point team, and I'm kind of repeating some things here, but are always looking for new ways to advocate for artists. A recent example, the launching of this open call for artists living in Maine and New Hampshire to gain access to galleries. I quote, this call for artist portfolios aims to bring greater visibility to the region's artists, promote collaborative cultural exchanges, and support the larger arts ecosystems the artists and galleries operate within. May other foundations find out about this program and consider duplicating it. As advertised, I wanted to offer some background on the Beverly Hallam monograph. So sometime in 1997 or thereabouts, Dean Howells, late of Kittery Point, approached me about writing a book about Beverly. Dean was devoted to the artist and her art and wanted to make sure that the world knew about her. I hadn't realized Dean passed away in 2022. Reading his obituary the other day made me regret not having been able to talk to him about his remarkable life. His concern over nuclear proliferation led him to work for the State Department in 1960. Starting in the Bureau of Intelligence and Research, he was there for 30 years. As this photo attests, Dean was also a devoted open ocean sailor. We eventually recruited Arnold Skolnick, an art designer, book designer, with whom I had worked on a bunch of books. Arnold, too, passed away in 2022. He was the reason I entered the art book world when he took me on to write Paintings of Maine, my first book, which came out in 1991. When Arnold and I compiled a new collection of Paintings of Maine in 2006, we included Beverly's wonderful acrylic and collage rendering of the Brunswick Topsom Bridge. I think of her every time I drive over it. The piece dates from the late 1950s when she was a regular visitor, a regular guest at her mass art professor Priscilla Nye's home in Topsom. While known for his book design, Arnold Skolnick's greatest claim to fame was designing the poster for the Woodstock Music Festival in 1969. Working with the Elizabeth Moss Gallery's printmaker David Wolfe produced a limited edition of the poster a few years ago. This is Arnold at Wolfe's Portland studio with the poster. I really miss that guy. So, art book design often entails having to track down images hither and yon. And while Arnold was obliged to do some of this hunting and gathering, Beverly made life easy for him. She was a brilliant photographer and had taken photos of all her work. I'm delighted that the York Public Library's exhibition, Chasing the Light, focuses on Beverly's use of photography in her work. It was key to so much of her creative output. Beverly also shared with us wonderful family photos, several of which we included in the book. I love this photograph of her mother, Alice Linney Murphy. And I love the story Beverly told of her mother meeting Leonard Bernstein's father. She ran a hair salon in Lynn, Massachusetts. And one day, Bernstein's father, Sam, who sold hairdressing supplies, came by. They got to talking about their kids. "You can't imagine what my son Lenny wants to be," said Mr. Bernstein. "He wants to be a composer of music, a musician. Can you believe it? I can't stand it." He then asked Alice what her daughter wanted to do. "She's going to be an artist," she proudly answered. "Oh my God," Bernstein exclaimed. "They're both going to starve to death." When Beverly told me this story, she laughed wonderfully. Beverly was also incredibly helpful to me in writing the book. She sat for extensive interview and shared clippings from her life as an artist. Her papers are stored at the Archives of American Art, the Fogler Library at the University of Maine, and also at Surf Point. She was always forthright in crediting those individuals who played a role in guiding her along the path of art. I wanted to mention a couple here, starting with Ann Carlton, her art teacher at Lynn English High School in Lynn, Massachusetts. Carlton was an inspiring and innovative teacher who once, according to Beverly, brought a goat into class for the students to draw. She also helped Beverly prepare to seek admission at Massachusetts School of Art and brought her to Ogunquit. I think that was the first time she came to Ogunquit. Carlton was selfless and generous. At one point, she declined a Guggenheim Fellowship in order to keep teaching. These are two paintings by Carlton. The Causeway on the top, Perkins Cove, circa 1927, and then the undated Pushing Off at the bottom. Beverly rarely focused on local Maine subjects. This is a rare exception, a wonderful modernist four-color woodcut print from 1976, Lobster Boat, Morning, Perkins Cove, Ogunquit. It's also a rare example of Beverly creating a woodcut. It's the only one I know of. This print is part of the Surf Point Mountain Foundation collection, and I thank Samantha Butler for supplying JPEGs of a number of photos for this talk. Another important figure in Hallam's early life, was her next-door neighbor in Lynn, the sculptor Allison Macomber. After spying him one day pouring plaster of Paris molds in his yard, she introduced herself and mentioned that she was interested in photography and wanted to study in New York City, but that her mother thought she was too young to venture off alone. Macomber recommended the Massachusetts School of Art, his alma mater. He subsequently took her under his wing, both in art, they toured exhibitions in Boston together, and in the air, for Macomber was a stunt flyer and became a bombardier in World War II. Macomber taught at Boston College and is known for a number of sculptures, including the plaque on the right dedicated to the football great Knute Rockne at the sculptor's alma mater, Notre Dame. On the back of the photo on the left, Macomber wrote this note: "Mrs. Macomber posing for me while demonstrating for convalescence in England." Just one of those rabbit holes I would love to just dig into. What is that about? While at Mass Art, Beverly learned about research and how to look at works of art from Ella Munsterberg. who taught the history of art. In her 4-year course, Munsterberg started in ancient Egypt and ended in Boston. As Beverly recounted to me, once a week, Munsterberg students visited all the galleries on Newbury Street. Pretending they were critics, they made thumbnail sketches of works on display and jotted down comments about specific artworks. For one final exam, Munsterberg had her students make floor plans of the Museum of Fine Arts and label the various exhibitions on all 3 floors. Okay. I couldn't find a photo of Munsterberg anywhere, but thought this Nefertiti bust might serve as a stand-in. Let me explain. The famous bust was discovered by the German Egyptologist Ludwig Borchardt, who was an old friend of Hugo Munsterberg, professor of psychology at Harvard, from 1892 to 1916. Munsterberg and his young daughter, Ella, visited the archaeological dig where Nefertiti was found. She was the only female allowed on the site. After the bust was brought to Berlin, 2 plaster copies were made, and one of them was presented to Hugo Munsterberg. Ella inherited the bust when her father died in 1916. She believed she resembled the bust, and in fact mused to students that perhaps she was Nefertiti incarnated. One Mass Art alumnus recounted that she would sometimes walk the corridors with the bust cradled in her arms. I wanted to give you a sense of Beverly's early work. She created this silkscreen print, Bullfight, in 1944 while a student at Mass Art. She entered the work in a group exhibition at the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston, and it was accepted. She told me, "I was overcome. This experience whetted my appetite for showing work, so I began painting on my own during the summer." Beverly held on to this work. It's part of the Surf Point collection. Hallam credited painter Lawrence Kupferman with awakening her to contemporary art. He would lug armfuls of illustrated books to his painting class at Mass Art. His enthusiasm was infectious, and long after Hallam graduated, he encouraged her to push on. This is a Kupferman painting, Of the Tide, 1948, in oil on board. Beverly was equally fascinated by the shapes and forms of tidal reaches. Here is her wonderfully palpable Tidewater from 1962, acrylic and mica talc on Belgian linen from the Zillman Art Museum collection in Bangor. Hallam used a basting tube and her fingers to build up the acrylic with mica talc to the extent that the painting begins to resemble a relief. She once said, "I am always mesmerized by the movement of the foam edge of a wilting wave." Poetry. When I spoke at the Ogunquit Museum in November 2013 on the occasion of the establishment of a scholarship fund in Beverly's name, I focused on her life as an educator. She did her first teaching while enrolled at Mass Art in the 1940s, volunteering for the Cambridge Public Schools Department of Art Education and leading Saturday morning classes at the Peabody Museum and the King Hooper Mansion in Marblehead. She also taught nights at the Boston Center for Adult Education and the YWCA. She was truly a teacher. Beverly recognized the importance of teachers in her own life. She was particularly indebted to Priscilla Nye, chair of the Education Department at Mass Art, who she noted spent her whole life, practically every hour of every day, trying to upgrade the quality of art education in the Boston area and throughout the country. This painting and drawing were from visits to Nye's summer home in Topsham, Maine in 1959. On the left, Mr. Barnes's drag rake, Priscilla Nye's barn, Topsham, Maine, 1959, acrylic. And on the right, kitchen at Priscilla Nye's, Topsham, Maine, 1959, pastel on paper, both from the Surf Point collection. Oops, I just want to go back for a second here. Beverly taught for a living from 1945 to 1962, first at LaSalle Junior College in Auburndale, Massachusetts, where she was appointed chair of the art department. Then at Mass Art, where she assumed an associate professor position in 1949. She played a major role in expanding Mass Art's curriculum. In 1950, she introduced the first courses in theater arts audiovisual aids, which she had minored at Syracuse University, and photography. No other art school in Boston offered photography at that time. Beverly was forever the pioneer and visionary. In an interview with the Maine Sunday Telegram in 1977, Beverly noted that teaching is, quote, an art, and good teaching is very difficult. It takes imagination and thoughtful preparation. Teaching keeps one immersed and propelled. Beverly never stopped being a teacher. I love the stories of the demonstrations she gave in the 1950s to explain the wonders of a new medium called polyvinyl acetate, now known as acrylic. Like a medicine man, Hallam once described herself, recalling how she traveled across New England and beyond with bottles full of polymer, wetting agents, plasticizers, and other ingredients. She was among the first artists to begin working with acrylics while still in graduate school at Syracuse University in 1953. This is one of Beverly's polyvinyl acetate paintings, Birthday Bouquet, 1956, her very first museum-acquired painting. As she told me, curator Louisa Dresser at the Worcester Art Museum selected it for their permanent collection. The acquisition gave me a great boost. In her excellent write-up of the York Public Library show, curator Kristina Durocher notes the importance of Beverly winning the first ever Blanche E. Coleman Prize in 1960. This $5,000 grant essentially changed the course of her life in art. With the money, she set off on an extended trip to Europe, accompanied by Mary Lee Smart, whose husband, Jack Smart, had died earlier in the year, and Floyd Covert, an artist and mass art colleague. Coleman was the first woman interior decorator in Boston. She also became the first woman to head an art program at Boston University when she was appointed director of the art department in the School of Education in 1919, a position she held for 13 years. Coleman left a lasting legacy in her will when she died in 1959, establishing the Blanche E. Coleman Foundation, the first artist-endowed foundation created to make cash grants for individual artists. Grants are made each year to New England area women artists who have completed their formal education, have exhibited considerable talent in the area of painting, sculpture, drawing, printmaking, mixed media, and photography, and exhibit financial need. I really love the pay it forward thread of this story. Through Coleman's generosity, Beverly got to explore the world and advance in her art. Through Beverly's and Mary Lee's generosity, artists get to do the same through the Surf Point Foundation. This is a clipping from the Boston University News with the headline, Miss Blanche E. Coleman, head of the art department, thinks that businessman can express better with lines and colors than by words and slogans. The European trip proved incredibly productive. Here are two of the many paintings Beverly created during her work. On the left, El Torcal and Malaga on the right, both 1962 and based on views in Spain. In these and other paintings, Beverly responded to the landscape in an abstract manner. She was particularly interested in geological formations. The rocks at El Torcal, she once noted, changed her palette. So these are both from the Surf Point collection. The mention of mica prompts me to take a slight tangent and highlight another innovative Maine artist, Mildred Burridge. Burridge started out as an impressionist in the early years of the 20th century, but later embraced abstract expressionism, a huge leap in aesthetics. She ended up creating these amazing abstract mica collages by attaching mica foil and paper to a panel, then painting abstractly on the surface of the collage. Burridge founded the Maine Art Gallery in Wiscasset, which is celebrating its 63rd year this summer. Beverly showed there several times in the early 1970s, including in an exhibition titled 5 Women Artists. Here's another painting Beverly made while in Europe, a wonderfully abstracted view of Hadrian's Villa near Tivoli outside Rome, thought to be the most imposing and complex Roman villa known. This 1961 pastel on Japanese paper is one of 10 of Beverly's works in the Portland Museum of Art collection. And here are two pieces inspired by visits to Venice. The first, Venetian Gondola, 1962, acrylic on Canson paper, captures the architecture and canals of the city. The second, on the right, highlights Beverly's sense of humor. Bidet Bouquet, Venice, 1968. It must surely offer one of the most, shall we say, unusual settings for a flower arrangement. Both pieces are from the Surf Point collection. I can hear her giggling. Big Muscle, 1965, is one of my favorite Hallam paintings. Beverly told me an amusing story about the piece. One night she turned the painting on its side to work on it horizontally. The canvas was brightly lit and could be seen from the road. The next morning, two little boys knocked at Hallam's door and asked if they could see the spaceship in her studio. Scale is mysterious, Beverly wrote regarding Big Muscle, and the shape of nature repeats itself in different forms above earth and under the sea. This is her Big Muscle 1965 from the Addison Gallery of American Art. And this is the photograph that Beverly worked from to paint Big Muscle, again from the Surf Point collection. The shell is very accurate, but she changed the colors of its setting. It's almost as if the mussel cast a blue shade on the rocks around it. I love having that source piece. Beverly made her first monotype by accident in 1958, when, as she recounted, she placed a piece of paper on the wet colors of her palette, rubbed her hand over it, and pulled the paper off. Like magic, she recalled, the paint transferred to the paper, and she was off to the races. Here is her monotype stack, 1968, also from the Addison Gallery of American Art, which has mounted several shows of her work. The piece demonstrates how Beverly sought to create new textures and striking compositions based on abstract elements of nature and geology. And I've paired it here on the right with Robert Newman's The Stack, 1976, oil on linen. A contemporary of Hallam's, Newman based his stack series on cairns, those rock formations that one finds along trails. In writing about this monotype, Power Plant Pollination, 1968-78, novelist Martin Dibner noted how Hallam, quote, moves into Miro-like dimensions, a departure from earlier, more formalized renditions. This is an oil monotype and hand-printed collage from the collection of Mr. and Mrs. John Whitney Payson. John Payson championed Beverly's work as a collector and gallerist, showing her work at the Midtown Payson Gallery in New York City for many years. This monotype collage and others around that time anticipate the often surreal quality of Beverly's digital work many, many years later. The Picasso vase that Beverly purchased in southern France during her Coleman Grant trip became a recurring motif over the years. The owl-faced ceramic makes an unusual appearance in this 1968 oil monotype, Fabricilia Slight Fever, from the Surf Point collection. It's a wonderful example of how Beverly would clean off the glass after a day of working with rollers and make use of the residues. A multitude of knife strokes and splashed clots of paint have been applied in a feverish manner, creating the milieu for the wild-eyed creature that is both fierce and comical. I can't resist including another of Beverly's Picasso vase pieces, which was featured in a wonderful show titled Floriography, The Language of Flowers, at Cove Street Arts in Portland in 2020. This piece highlights Beverly's passion for pastel, an undersung medium, in my humble opinion. I wonder whether the breathing issues she dealt with later in life might be traced to exposure to some of the materials she worked with, including pastel, which is notorious for causing respiratory problems. This is Oriental Poppies, Iris, and Rhododendron in Picasso vase, 1980, from the Surf Point collection. Which is not to say that Beverly didn't take precautions when working with various mediums. I've always loved this portrait of her by Christopher Ayres from a profile of the artist by Edgar Allan Beam in Maine Times. Having taken up airbrush in the early 1980s, she donned this heavy-duty NIOSH respirator mask while making what would become some of her greatest paintings. For the sake of practice, before fully exploring the airbrush, in February 1981, Beverly purchased a can of black automotive spray paint and set out to make some rapid pictures. She placed some old paper-white narcissus bulbs directly onto large pieces of rice paper, using common pins to keep their wilted leaves from blowing away. She then blasted away with the spray paint, adding a few strokes of pastel at the end. This is one of those pieces, Paper White's Farewell No. 2, 1981, oil and pastel on paper. Paper White's Farewell No. 2 was owned by Helen and Sumner Weinbaum, who lived nearby in York. They had purchased the painting at Hope Sound Galleries North, John Payson's gallery in Brunswick. I had the pleasure of spending part of a day with the Weinbaums some years ago. They were a delightful couple, both committed to supporting the arts, education, and the environment through their philanthropy, working with the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and the Greater Piscataqua Community Foundation. Helen Weinbaum, née Auerbach, a television and stage actress who had been painted by Fairfield Porter, was instrumental in conserving thousands of acres of land through the York Land Trust. Sumner was one of the original Mad Men, creating some of the earliest television commercials for clients such as Johnson & Johnson, General Foods, and General Electric. After retiring, he became a full-time sculptor. This is his bronze Hands of Hope, which is sited in a courtyard next to Temple Israel in Portsmouth. Hallam's airbrush paintings stand out as perhaps her greatest achievement as an artist. When asked how she ended up focusing so much attention on flowers, she recalled as a youngster, another one of these stories, walking through a cemetery on her way to school in Lynn and encountering bouquets placed on the stones. She would look up the floral varieties in the library. Beverly also remembered visiting the Ware collection of glass flowers in the Botanical Museum at Harvard. These marvelous glass models, created by Leopold and Rudolf Blaschka, artist-naturalists from northern Bohemia, left an indelible impression on her. She would bring the same meticulous care to creating her floral paintings. I'd like to highlight Beverly's brilliant renderings of flowers in the next several slides, starting with this acrylic that predates her airbrush work. Here she celebrates a bouquet of partridgeberry, an evergreen plant that features white blossoms. The painting's energy and freedom reminds me somewhat of some of Arshile Gorky's abstract canvases. This is Partridgeberry 1978 acrylic from the Surf Point collection. I love the simplicity of this pastel from 1981, Freesia in Florida water bottle. That line that winds around the central bouquet might be the outline of a table or merely a linear element meant to set off the funnel-shaped flowers. Here, Beverly might be testing her powers of observation as she considers her next move into airbrush masterpieces. As great a change in approach as can one imagine, moving from what art critic Theodore Wolff called muted, subtly suggestive organic abstractions to, quote, brilliantly hued, spectacularly patterned flower paintings that are sharply focused, precisely rendered, and startlingly accurate as any photorealist images, but that make their point with considerably more imagination and flair. Let's start with Beverly's Nasturtium with Galax, 1984, acrylic from the Fogg Art Museum at Harvard University. This perfectly square painting, 72 by 72 inches, highlights her ability to mix the real with the abstract. In Richard Kane's film about her, she noted she didn't consider herself a photorealist because she changed a lot of things in the process of painting. I've heard similar disavowals from Richard Estes. She also stated, I never learned so much about color till I started using airbrush. I had to look up Galax. It's an evergreen, herbaceous, perennial plant. I should note that when Arnold Skolnick and I did the book on Beverly, it was her idea to reprint her article on painting acrylic with airbrush, which had appeared in Watercolor magazine in 1992. It's another example of her generosity in sharing her techniques. In an interview in 1986 with Robert Taylor of the Boston Globe, Beverly stated, "I don't like a fussy look. My canvases should have the quality of an enlarged photograph." This painting, Tulips on Carpet, 1986, among her greatest and in certain manner her most modern floral picture, bears this out. She placed the vase on the carpet and looking straight down, brought the blossoms right up to the viewfinder. So close, in fact, that the flowers are cropped at the edges of the canvas. The magnificent geometric fragments of the hooked carpet act as a ground for the gargantuan blossoms. I thought of Beverly while wandering through the famous Keukenhof flower show in Holland this past April. My wife and I saw enough tulips to last a lifetime. This is a close-up of one of many blossoms. It reminded me of Beverly. The next 5 slides demonstrate Beverly's brilliant use of window blinds to create dramatic settings for her floral arrangements. Here is the actual setting just off the side of her studio at Surf Point. Note the carpet, parts of which appear in a number of her paintings. In this first one, Beverly presents an arrangement of reddish grasses in a narrow vase, its intricate shadows set against the vertical lines of the blinds. As I wrote in my book on Beverly, looking at a section of the tall, see-through glass beaker that serves as a vase, one wonders in awe how the artist managed to render so precisely the elaborate network of stems, like the cross-section of a conduit with its multicolor wires crisscrossing one another. This is Rose Grass, Liquitex acrylic from the Addison Gallery of American Art, 1982. Here's another dramatic tabletop presentation, Goldenrod, 1984, from a private collection. The single stem of goldenrod nearly disappears in the middle of this wonderfully abstract design of stripes. Describing the painting, I noted a sense of foreboding, where the blinds cast shadows like the bars of a prison over the flower in its simple cruet holder. This painting represents one of only a few occasions in which Beverly used a paintbrush in an airbrush floral piece, here to paint in the blossom. She told me one day, as the painting was being carried from her studio, a bee lighted on the goldenrod. An extraordinary tribute to her powers of verisimilitude. This spectacular 6-foot square painting, Orange Prince, 1985, is in the Farnsworth Art Collection, one of 4 Hallam pieces there. From the Farnsworth website, the orange prince flowers, blown up to the scale of an exotic tropical species, are actually small wilted pansies combined with lily-of-the-valley leaves arranged in 4 tiny bud vases on a mirrored pedestal. The mirror, although appearing to be a large glass table, actually sits on another larger sized table. This kind of perceptual confusion lies at the heart of Hallam's vision. There is so much to admire in Beverly's rendering of the glass. How did she make the reflections look so real in the flasks? She told me she simply didn't think about what the objects were. I just paint exactly what I see. Like a miracle, they end up looking like glass. Miracle indeed. I recommend watching Richard Kane's documentary, Beverly Hallam, Artist as Innovator, because it includes an excerpt from Calvin Kilbro's 1991 video of Beverly Hallam, the flower painting, showing how showing her demonstrating her airbrush practice. It's really quite amazing. Beverly thought of herself as a flower painter, not, she strongly attested, as a still life artist. I used only one object in my paintings other than bouquets during my airbrush period, she noted, and that was a paperweight. Even in this painting, Paperweight, 1987, the still life object, which she found in a Paris flea market in 1961, has a floral appearance. The central swirling pattern might be a small bouquet embedded in the round glass. The paperweight shares the table with small campanula set in a turquoise tumbler. This painting is in the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C., and was once part of the Art in Embassies program. Some blossoms, Beverly once wrote, like to be left alone. Others enjoy being crammed together. Then there are quiet ones, cocky ones, and loudmouths. She was like a flower whisperer. The lily featured in Golden Splendor 1987 might fit the loudmouth category. Looming into the foreground, it almost seems to be trumpeting its magnificence. This is also from the Surf Point collection. In 1977, Beverly and Mary Lee invited poet May Sarton to move from her home in New Hampshire to their property in York. She did so and lived out the last 22 years of her life in a wild knoll, her house by the sea. She and Beverly shared a passion for cultivating flowers. Sarton might be echoing Beverly when she wrote about gardening. Do I spend too much time at this ephemeral task? In spring, summer, and autumn, I work harder at it than at writing. And I expect that looks crazy. But what it does is balance all the anxieties and tensions and keeps me sane. Sanity plus flowers does make sense. Sarton died in 1995. Beverly made this photo in 2000. It's titled May Sarton's Arrangements from the Surf Point collection. In her later years, Beverly more or less put aside painting flowers, but there were exceptions, including this 2007 oil on canvas, Ellie's Roses, seen here with an ink and acrylic study for the painting. The study demonstrates the care and freedom of her approach to her flower paintings. Both pieces are in the Surf Point collection. My book on Beverly was published in 1998, too early to feature any of her digital work, which she began in the early 2000s. I'm glad to see this work included in this exhibition at the library, another example of her exploring new artistic territory. These are two of Beverly's digital pieces titled Fuyang and Zitsu from the Getty Photo Archives. They were photographed by Gregory Reck for the Portland Press Herald on the occasion of her show at the Hartwood College of Art in Kennebunk in 2004. A pioneer who has always managed to blend ingenuity with aesthetics, Hallam began exploring various design software programs, developing a repertoire of shapes that she arranged in abstract configurations. She was always comfortable working in abstraction. Many of her acrylics and monotypes are non-representational, and even her floral images have an essential abstract quality to them. The computer-produced pieces range from configurations of floating geometric forms, often symmetrically arranged, to such dynamic compositions as this one, Wild Party, 2007, from the Surf Point collection. I was delighted to be able to join Richard Kane and his wife Melody Kane Lewis for part of the filming of the documentary Beverly Hallam, Artist is Innovator. Watching that film the other day made me smile, especially the parts when Beverly shares the graphic tools she was exploring on her computer, demonstrating how the software program uses a toilet flushing sound to accompany deleting a part of the picture. She positively giggled. I took this photo of Beverly during the filming. One of my favorite moments in that documentary is when Beverly is giving a tour of her library at Surf Point. As she walks along, she suddenly turns to open the door to a large and spacious closet where she has stored art magazines and journals. Beyond the pleasure of showing off this extremely well-organized archive, Beverly explained that this collection would serve as a resource for the artists who would one day come to Surf Point as residents. I love this photo of Beverly and Mary Lee partaking of lobster. While Beverly's principal legacy to us all is the astounding body of work she created in her lifetime, a complimentary bequest, if you will, is the remarkable trust that she and Mary Lee established to support artists in the future. As Mary Lee once explained, most artists want to get away from their everyday routine and be absolutely free. The idea is to give artists the chance to do their work. Such an excellent idea. I end this talk with a photo I took of the signs posted on the road to Surf Point, with the arrows pointing, as it were, to another vintage portrait of Beverly and Mary Lee. They were devoted to each other and to art. To join them for lunch at Surf Point or for dinner at a favorite restaurant in Ogunquit was to be privy to a splendid partnership as they spoke of current art trends or the history of the art colony or varieties of flowers. May we raise a virtual glass to their generosity and the ongoing success of the Surf Point Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl. It was just magnificent. We enjoyed it so much.
Thank you.
I would like to invite anyone that would like to buy a book and then have it signed by Carl. Maybe Carl, you could sit back here.
Sure.
And you
Wow, I feel like I'm at the UN or
I
something.
know, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, right up.
So then you can come up here and have him sign it and get a chance to say hi. And also, how many, have all of you seen the exhibit upstairs? How many maybe have not? So we're closing like at 4. I mean, I think you'll have plenty of time, so maybe by 3:30. So if you really want a book and then you can go upstairs, that's fine, but the library will close at 4, but you'll have time to look at it before then.
And I can also take any questions if we have time for that.
Absolutely. Did anyone have any questions?
Like, what are the 39 steps?
I can bring this microphone around.
That's fine. Thank you for coming.